This Sunday, NASCAR returns with the Busch Clash at the LA Memorial Coliseum, and I decided now would be a good time to start thinking ahead and talk about some potential venues that NASCAR could go to as part of the Busch Clash. I'll be starting at number 12, then going to number 1 by least likely to happen to most likely to happen. First up, at number 12, we have a move to the UK. Now this is least likely to happen mainly because of the weather in early February, but also because of travel costs. It'd be a massive undertaking on NASCAR's part, and it really would be a question of risk and reward. There are a lot of risks hauling the teams across the Atlantic, but there are a lot of rewards once they do cross it, or at least on paper. The United Kingdom is at the epicenter of European motorsports, and NASCAR already has a footprint there with the NASCAR Euro Series, which has been growing in popularity recently. There's also been a surge in British NASCAR fans with the ever-growing rise of NASCAR today. The biggest thing for me that puts the UK so low on this list is the fact that there are only road courses there. Well, unless you make a street course around Big Ben. I don't think we would need another road course on the calendar. We have plenty already, in my opinion. At number 11, we have a return to Australia. Yes, that's right, a return. You see, NASCAR already tried going down there in the late 80s and early 90s, but I think a mix of bad timing, tire wars, and a number of other things that didn't culminate to its success are reasons why it failed. There were a lot of byproducts of it, though, such as the Australian Association for Stock Car Auto Racing, or AUSCAR, no, I'm not making that up, and an increase in dirt racing and midget racing, kind of like we have here in the US. I think that while there is a pretty small NASCAR fan base in that area, you have the potential to capitalize it on grow more interest abroad. Australia is a pretty good one, because while they do have road courses and street courses, they also have ovals. Sticking with the theme of overseas races, why don't we talk about the land of the rising sun? This would also be a reuniting with NASCAR, as Japan did have an exhibition race back in the late 90s. The biggest reason why that failed is because they made an exhibition race at the very end of the season, and overseas too, which in my opinion had the writing on the wall from the get-go. Now putting it at the beginning of the season might be a completely different story, and I think with the growing motorsports culture that has happened since the late 90s in Japan, that is bound to be a success. Again, it would be a pretty huge undertaking for the teams, so this isn't too likely to happen, but it is pretty cool to think of NASCAR stock cars driving around Suzuka or Fuji. At number 9, we have Mexico. While this is still international geopolitically speaking, it is a lot closer to home. NASCAR really hasn't ventured down south to Mexico since the late 2000s, but I think going down there now could drum up some interest. Mexico does have ovals, and they do have road courses, so NASCAR can have a wide array of track types to choose from. The final international track is Canada, and I think now is the best time to issue the disclaimer. I'm not saying any of these tracks will be the Busch Clash, and I know that different countries have different protocols for the pandemic, so it's not likely any of these would happen now, but certainly within the next decade or two, NASCAR could start thinking outside of the box. Now, on the topic of Canada, Canadians love NASCAR, and there are quite a bit of Canadian NASCAR fans that have been eager to have a NASCAR track in their own country. NASCAR knows this as they theme tracks like New Hampshire and Michigan with Canadian flags. So I think going up north is a match made in heaven in my opinion. And while they only have road courses up there, I still think that a majority of the NASCAR fan base here in the US would be interested. I think this is the most likely to happen on an international scale. At number 7, we have Iowa Speedway. Now yes, I understand the conditions in Iowa are not going to be as warm as NASCAR would like to start off the year, which is why it's at number 7. On February 6th, Iowa is expected to be 25 degrees and partly cloudy, so the fans would freeze severely by the end of the race. But say it was a bit warmer. Then I think this would be a pretty good option for NASCAR to look into. IndyCar is currently planning a doubleheader there this year, so why should NASCAR jump in? It used to be a mainstay for trucks and Xfinity, kind of like how Gateway is and was. And NASCAR is going to Gateway, so I see no reason not to go to Iowa. The racing there is pretty good historically speaking, and on top of that, one of the track owners is Rusty Wallace. At number 6, we have Kentucky. I know, not the most popular track to return back to, which is why it's pretty low. Next week, it's actually supposed to warm up a bit in Sparta, with it being in the low to high 40s. So I don't think weather is too big of an issue, at least if they ran it this year. Now, I know the racing at Kentucky wasn't that great in its tenure, but we did leave off wondering, what else? I mean, the 2020 race was okay, and it was a bit better than previous Kentucky races, so it could put on a show. It's also pretty close to NASCAR's home in Charlotte, North Carolina, so you wouldn't have to haul equipment halfway across the country and then some. It might be something to think about for NASCAR. At number 5, we have another track that saw its last NASCAR Cup Series race quite recently, Chicagoland. If we were racing there this week, the weather would hover around 30 degrees. So again, pretty typical early February weather and still pretty cold. Now in terms of racing, this is a big yes. Chicagoland had some of the best racing we have seen in NASCAR, and it was always a pretty fun race to watch. The last 2 races especially did not disappoint, and again, it was kind of a lame duck move on NASCAR's part to leave Chicagoland abruptly. Now this one would have to be done ASAP because of the fact that the common person doesn't really care too much about an idle oval lying in the middle of nowhere, and is likely to demolish or renovate it at a moment's notice. So this would definitely have to be done within the next 5-ish years, but if they do a return, I think a lot of people would be happy with the move. Another thing is, unlike the previous ones, this could actually be a mainstay as the Busch Clash. At number 4, we have Rockingham. Now Rockingham has actually had pretty good weather this week as it's been around 50 degrees or higher. It's also very easy on the teams from a logistical standpoint as it is a North Carolina-based track. Of course, the renovations would need to be done swiftly and thoroughly, but if they use the money they were given by the local government, well, this track could be race ready in no time. It also would be a pretty good replacement for the LA Clash, especially if the LA Clash does well. Rockingham is a short track, and in the past, it has seen some good racing, so I expect it to be kind of like Richmond on the calendar. Now let's address the biggest elephant in the room. Will this drum up interest and attract new fans? Probably, but not as much as going to a growing or developed market, which doesn't have any NASCAR tracks in the vicinity. While it would be a good move for NASCAR and its loyal fans, team owners, and more, the motive NASCAR has is to go beyond North Carolina, not stay in it. Still at number 3, I have North Wilkesboro, another North Carolina-based NASCAR track. Every time North Wilkesboro breaks the news talking about renovations and the possibility or the hope of seeing it back on the calendar, it gets the NASCAR fan base pretty excited. And so I think that if you make that the Busch Clash, and in the near foreseeable future, if we do get to see North Wilkesboro as the Busch Clash, it would definitely drum up curiosity, it would drum up excitement, and it would also drum up intensity for the racing overall. I think that NASCAR drivers really want to see North Wilkesboro back. I think everybody wants to see North Wilkesboro back. But again, it would not really expand NASCAR's presence on a national level. At number 2, we have the most tedious idea to discuss, and that is going back to the old. I'm going to clump the Daytona Oval and the Daytona Road Course into one, since they are at the same venue. Now, the Daytona Oval was a very exciting way to start off the season, and I definitely miss watching it kick off the NASCAR calendar. Though, with the next-gen shortage that is currently going on, I don't think a move to Daytona would be viable right now. But in the next couple of years, who knows? This would be more of NASCAR putting their hands in the air and just blatantly giving up the search for new markets. It would bring stability to the table, though. Now, the Daytona Road Course as the Busch Clash was dreadful in my opinion. You had 20 cars racing at an over 2.5-mile road course with almost no cautions because it was a road course. That's bound to make the cars more spread out and not really instigate a whole lot of excitement. I do think the finish was good, but the finish doesn't speak volume for the entire race. Nonetheless, it would be the week after the 24 Hours of Daytona, so they wouldn't have to change the track configuration. But it wouldn't be a popular move, and I don't think anyone is expecting to return to Daytona to open up the season, at least in the very near foreseeable future. At number 1, I think the track that is most likely to happen is the one that was talked about a little bit last year, but has seemingly disappeared from the mainstream conversation, and that is the Chicago Street Course. They have the plans, and they have the idea, as well as being in a pretty good market. Now, I know with everything going on there, it wouldn't be particularly safe for the drivers, but again, after the chaos dies down there, hopefully NASCAR can make their move. And at that, I think it would be a pretty good move nonetheless. So with that, there are 12 ideas for where NASCAR could host the Busch Clash. Let me know which of these NASCAR tracks you want to see on the calendar, or maybe some tracks of your own that you would like to see having an exhibition race to start off the year. Comment them down below. Until next time, this has been The News. I'll see you.